Town of Madison Board of Finance. Stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Public for which it stands.
All right. So first item is approval of the minutes from May 7th. Motion to approve. Second. Any amendments? All in favor of passing?
Aye.
Chair's comments. So John's going to be a little bit late. He had a conflict. He will be here. And any comments from the finance members? And report from the first select.
Sorry, I just have my liaison reports. I just wanted to mention that, thank you, for Penny, setting up the tour of the new school in Net River. I was, so grateful to be able to go and see it. It's beautiful. I'm so excited. I hope the community will also have an opportunity to see it. And I also, want to plug the library that's having their bash coming up. And encourage people to attend that as well as the library as well.
Well, obviously next week is a big week, especially for these folks here. We've got 4th of July, we've got the parade, you know, we've got the concert on the green. So looking forward to that. Hopefully the temperatures are not going to be as crazy as they are now. So just want to remind people, check the town website. Traffic closures, road, we get a lot of questions all of a sudden, and you've got to buy your beach passes if you're planning to be at the beaches over 4th of July weekend with guests. You got to get that prior to Thursday, right, Austin?
Wednesday by
Yeah,
noon.
but Wednesday by noon. So, and that's our kind of special event policy that we put in place. It just helps really keep things moving at the surf club. And, so we don't have a lot of traffic jams and things like that. The other thing I just want to comment on that, I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to see, we had 2 CIP projects kind of close the loop. One was Garden Point. So we did our kind of inaugural flag raising a couple weeks ago. It's absolutely beautiful. So I just encourage you all to go visit it. It's exciting to see something that was in the CIP coming to fruition after all these years. Secondly, we removed the last 2 utility poles in the downtown center project. That's probably been over 20 years in the CIP. Obviously a lot completed over the years by different administrations. And then there was these 2 really lonely poles that weren't even doing anything, but for some reason it took a long time. We can tell the backstory to that. Those came down last week. So that officially finishes that phase. And our public works department and our town engineer is working on the design for the next phase. And we're hoping to have that completed this year in terms of the actual design. We'll have public hearings on that. So those are just 2 exciting things to keep in mind. That it's great to see some of these things come. And then there will be a ribbon cutting in August for the new school. And I'm sure I'll double check with when they're going to have kind of the community event. I know they're still in the middle of moving. So a lot of this is trying to make sure that things are safe and bringing people in, but they started the moving process. So it's pretty crazy right now at all the different schools. So that's my update.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move to citizen comments, and we see that Jim has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Jim.
Jim Schwartz, Jonathan's Landing in Madison. I had a question that I hope gets covered in the presentation regarding the fire department expansion. What I wanted to make sure we were looking at was if we need to move to a career fire department, which I'm assuming if town's going to grow and as volunteers start to age out, that may be a possibility, that there's adequate space, you know, to house them and, you know, for kitchens and things like that, that was planned for ahead of time. You know, I'd rather spend more money now and make sure that that's in place if it's, you know, a possibility to happen. And that's it. So me wanting to spend more money, that's different for everybody today, right? So, all right. Thank you. And everybody have a great 4th of July.
Thank you, Jim.
You as well, Jim.
Thanks.
Any other public comment? Doesn't seem to be anything online, so we'll close that down. All right, so first agenda item up for new business is the update on the Madison Post Company Firehouse Expansion EOC project.
See if I can roll this over. It's tough to sit and present. Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Whitaker. I'm the construction manager for the Madison Public Schools in the town of Madison. Can't believe I've been here almost a year now. I've never been before your board. The selectmen plenty, but never the Board of Finance. So nice to see all of you. And just have a brief update on the Emergency Operations Center project that was in your packet. Tried to outline kind of some really high level milestones of the project. And of course, it's the Board of Finance, stick to the numbers. I'm half a finance person too, so I partially live in your world. So this project, I started working on it late last summer. The project had been going on before that in the kind of conceptual phase. The town was working with Downs Construction at that time to guide them through the RFP process for a design builder. That's when Sam engaged me to jump in on the project. That was at the tail end of the interview process to choose a design builder. We ended up going with Munger Construction. And at the time, the project budget that was sitting in the SIP was 3.394 million. With of that, 2.471500 was covered through a FEMA grant. So that's an active grant that the town was awarded, and it is sitting on the books and waiting to spend down. The performance period for that grant is actually in March of 26, the end of March 26. So there is definitely an urgency on the time side to get that to fully utilize that grant. At the time, when I first jumped in on this project, that 3.3 was said to be too low. After learning a little bit more about the project, I agreed. Speaking over with the director of facilities, we were kind of kicking around early on. We both thought this looked like about a $5 million project. All the vendors that we interviewed, every single one of them made a comment that they thought the budget was going to be inadequate based on the conceptual design and what was presented in the RFP. But at that point, we're like, okay, let's work through this process. Using the design build process, you could make changes along the way. It's not as rigid as design bid build. So we kind of had at it. And so the goal from the beginning was to build a pretty austere structure. It was not, sometimes in the design process, it becomes a whole wish list thing and you build this grandiose type facility and then you value engineer the heck out of it when it actually goes out to bid. That was not what we did in this process. We were very focused on what the fire department needed to operate and what the town needed in EOC. So this is an opportunity to partner with the fire department. The town has its EOC on the top, and the fire department has storage space at the bottom, as well as some administrative offices. So really good opportunity to partner up on that. We go through the process and we arrive at 50% design development documents. And that is our first waypoint with Munger doing a full cost estimate for the project. In a design build process, if you're not familiar with it, you work through the design and there are estimates that are done at various phases throughout the design. And then the design builder actually does their own bid. And then they come back to us with what's called a GMP, which is a guaranteed maximum price. And then the town makes the decision at that point to move forward with them or not. All we are obligated to Munger for at this time are these design and pre-construction costs. So that estimate came back in just shy of $5 million, which would put our total project cost at $5.5 million. Again, that was done with 50% design development documents. So we really went into overdrive on what could we cut out of this? What could we change? What could we do to save money? We kind of went through like a traditional value engineering process and also went through some situations where we were dramatically changing the building. For example, just building a one-story structure. There's more notes on that. If you look back at former Board of Selectmen meetings, went through that in great detail. I won't cover that there because it's not necessarily financial. Bottom line is the building committee decided that the way to go to get what we need for this project was to establish the budget at 5.394. So $2 million over what the original budget was, slightly less than the 5.5 that we had in our 50% DD estimate, figuring that there were some small elements we'd be able to change to shave a couple dollars off. So right now where we are is Munger Construction is actively bidding the project to all their trade subcontractors. We actually just received 100% construction documents 2 days ago. And they are working on putting together that GMP, that gross maximum price proposal. And it is due on 7/2 at this point. So 4/10/25, the building committee voted to recommend the Board of Selectmen increase the project budget from 3.394 to 5.394. The hose company in the meantime is committed to a $200,000 contribution towards the project. So what that did was that lowered the special appropriation amount to the $2,602,900 that you see before you tonight. And with that money, plus the contribution, plus the little bit we already have in the project, plus the grant, we get to that 5.394. So that is what's in front of you tonight. Happy to take any questions.
Questions?
Yes, Ben, actually I have 2 questions. So thank you very much. One is, can you talk more about the building code modifications this is dependent on? For the price, 'cause I saw that in one of the notes, and I was just wondering what that means, and what's the probability that we get those?
Sure. So there are a couple code modifications that we are exploring. They're in various stages. Some of them, Sam has actually gone out and made contact with the state building official, and we have a high probability of getting. One of them is to do with the sprinkler system. We are looking at a way of not sprinklering the addition. We're calling it the addition. The existing firehouse is not sprinkled now, and it's a matter of creating adequate fire separations to not require sprinklering the rest of the building. So we're going to do fire line and everything that comes along with that. Another one is in terms of the elevator. Right now, there is an elevator to meet ADA compliance that has 2 openings in it. So they kind of open at 90 degrees. Door opens here, door opens here. And it's a full-on commercial elevator. We are seeking a code modification to go to what's called a Lula, which is more of a glorified chairlift, for lack of a better way of describing it. So it's not a full-out commercial elevator, and that would shave some cost off as well. There were a couple more minor ones too. They escape me at the moment, but there are a couple other that we are exploring. The rest of them were finishes, which we would have to go back through ACA to change like the masonry in the back of the building to a different finish, using like a concrete panel or something like that. We had a bunch of like $20,000 or $30,000 things we were hoping would add up. So you have a fixture count. Yeah, that was another thing. We were trying to. We are actually below in the current design the required amount of plumbing fixtures for the total occupancy of the building. It's kind of a weird structure. Or a weird use. We've dealt with this throughout the process where it's going to have, administrative offices in use daily, but the full-fledged EOC isn't operating every day, but it still per code has to be able to have plumbing facilities for all those people. Essentially, it was occupied every day. So I think we're 1 or 2 fixtures short, which we're going to get a code modification for, which I think there was a high probability of getting that.
Thank you. The second question is, I think it predates your time, but it seems that the original budget that was thought was it was way under budget. What needed the helical pilings, septic tank, and things like that? Why did we estimate so low originally?
2021. 2021, at the time, town was using Colliers, the Colliers got the estimate, and that's the number that we used to apply for the grant for.
Okay.
Ever since then, it's been skyrocketing. And unfortunately, you can't go back and ask for money with the grant. We actually asked that question. Because this grant, when it became available, it's a 75-25 match. Fed put up 75, town match is 25. But they won't increase, the cost of inflation, unfortunately.
All right, thank you.
And I think, and also with the federal grant, BABA came into play, Build America, Buy America, so that brought up the cost.
Yeah, actually, our grant was one of the first ones where that new act applied to.
That typically the FEMA people told us adds 20%. To the cost, yeah. So.
Anybody else looking this way now?
Yes, I actually have a question. Thank you. It was a nice presentation. The federal grant, is that specifically tied to one location? In other words, it has to be done at the current firehouse, or is that non-site specific? It is site specific.
It's actually design specific too. If we were to change the design of the building, we'd have to go back to them.
And the current emergency operations center is now on the Board of Ed.
To the Madison, all the equipment's in a closet.
Okay. And one other question I'm asking you to speculate, I suppose, in terms of the comment that was just made by the public. Your presentation to the Board of Selectmen said that chosen design would provide enough space for the department to operate efficiently for upwards of 50 years. Is that assuming current staffing levels without significant increase, or have we built in some kind of plan for future growth?
I'll answer that. I was going to answer Jim's question from the public. I'm Greg Carroll, Assistant Chief of Fire Department. So to his question, yes, the building would suffice to last us, our plan was at least 50 years. Our goal obviously is to remain a volunteer fire department as long as possible in town. The benefits are immense to everyone in the town. And, we take pride in doing that. If a career fire department did happen to, need to take place, the square footage we're building would be more than adequate to handle. There need to be modifications inside, internally to the building. But the square walls on the outside, that would be able to hold it and, house people there 24 hours a day. They'd be able to cook, shower, sleep and all that. That would be more than sufficient for it.
You also wouldn't have to update the new construction, so to speak. So the new construction is the EOC, a couple of administrative offices and apparatus space on the ground level. So even if you had to say at some later date, expand on the other side of the building, then this new work that's going to be built in this project would still be there. Like you wouldn't have to touch that.
Thank you.
And we did do the presentation for the Board of Selectmen. I know you guys all probably got the packet with the presentation. If there's any questions in it, myself, Travis Gould, the president of the company, and Bob Kittle, the chief of the fire department, we're all here to be more than willing, able to answer any questions you may have from it, or clarification, or go over any points too.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jude. It's just a free for all. What'd you say? Go ahead, Jude.
So I'm just wondering, every so often in town, we start talking about regionalization of different services, and one of them has been of the dispatch service that we currently have. This EOC, would that be compatible? Would it create any problems if discussions like that were to happen in the future? Would it limit it at all, the ability to provide for a more regional dispatch response?
No, we actually had an exploratory meeting about this last week, and we were assured that it would probably be seamless just as it would be now. We would be able to be connected on the state network at our firehouse downtown, which can then go to any dispatch center in the state. So as long as you're connected to that core, there's really no issue with anything as far as what we would need on, connecting to dispatch centers anywhere.
We would also have a space that we could participate in regional activities as well. I mean, that's having a purpose-built EOC, for an opportunity for cross-training or simulations or anything like that come up, we can now host those. So.
Can I answer your question, Jude?
Yes, thank you.
Bob, stand on this side.
I'm all set.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know Matt put all the rules away.
Take it to all the friends.
I'm gonna go last. John, go ahead.
Thank you for that presentation. Getting back to Matt's question on the cost, I understand that prices in 2020, in 2021 versus 2025 are going to be different, but it still seems like a very large increase. Anything else you can add to the discussion?
Sure. Yeah, and I think I could draw on some experience from other projects in town as well, where I think we have been under budgeted at several projects. I mean, there's another project coming to you tonight that was under budget. Another one where, when we're picking up these projects last year, we're like, this doesn't seem like enough money, especially in today's environment. Now, whether I can share an experience of the district I was with prior to coming here, where, and I've never done this in my career before, 20 years of capital planning. In 2022, we took our capital plan, 60 projects in, about $46 million. I added 25% across the board to every project. Indiscriminate, where we normally went after each project, evaluated it every year, tinkered with the numbers, refined our estimates. This was just like, throw it in there. And some of those projects were coming in under budget. So there's that side of it, that speaks to the escalation. But I think some of these numbers were low to begin with, and I'm not gonna pretend like I know all the reasons why. But it could be that some negotiation happens before the project's even conceptually designed. If we come and, places do this, I don't know if that happens here, but it could be the project's 4 million, 3.5. And then you know it's gonna be 4, but you try like heck now to get to the 3.5 in vain, knowing that 4 is really the right number. That's a game I personally don't like to play. I like to be honest, if the project's gonna be 5 million, let's talk about it from the beginning. Things happen, costs escalate, weird things happen. Sometimes you get through the design process, find out you need something you didn't need before. I think in this process, what was almost like a double whammy was the number was low, and there were a bunch of site-specific elements that everybody was talking about right from the beginning, like needing a pile foundation, a helical pile or similar foundation, which are very expensive. And we're like, we think we need it. We're like 50% sure we need it, but let's proceed and see if we really need it. And oh, by the way, we needed it. So I don't think in this process, in this project specifically, there were anything that we thought we were gonna need, hoped we didn't, that we didn't end up needing. So you combine that cocktail together and you got yourself a right for under budget situation.
Another question, if not for this grant, would we be moving the EOC there? Or is it just, I mean, to me, it's almost like a convenient, we're putting this in and that helps with part of the project cost, so.
So when the grants first came out, we actually went to the Board of Selectmen, they got on board with combining EOC with the firehouse because it kind of killed 2 projects with 1.
Yep.
So that's what we pursued, and we got we were awarded the grant through Congressman Courtney's office. It's if we went the other way, realistically, EOC could go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right, but at the end of the day, because we got the grant through Homeland Security for EOC, we have to have a functioning EOC. It just can't be a firehouse.
So the firehouse has been a CIP project. It's in year 1. It's been kind of pushed down back and forth, and the reason was looking for funding sources. So EOC wasn't currently a CIP project, but it would recognize the facility study to have its own dedicated space. So when we kind of realized we could make it a grant that would fit the EOC, put it in the firehouse, we could kind of mesh the 2 projects together and get a little more bang for our buck for the town.
It's like you're getting one of the 2 uses for free, right? It's like,
That's what I'm getting at. And I guess our grantor is okay with that. FEMA's fine. I mean, they encourage it to put it with, so it kind of worked together.
this is a completely unique project for me in my career. And it's kind of cool how it all shook out like that, where you really could do something that benefits both sides for the greater good. So
Well, it's encouraging to see, our folks grabbing that grant money because, as I've said before, we get very little. So it's good to see that we're pursuing it. So commend you for that.
And not only that, it's going to greatly enhance, our response time. So it's going to reduce the amount of time it takes us to get set up. Right now, like fire department has to pull some trucks out to get another apparatus out. It probably takes me 20 minutes to set the room up. I mean, it's not the cumbersome time of setting up the room. It's that 20 minutes that's lost trying to run an incident when it's critical at that time. Usually if we get fair warning of a storm, we set it up, like a day or 2 ahead of time, so it's set up.
And actually, I had a third question.
John, you're.
go ahead.
Last one.
Go
And you kind of already answered what the concern was. Is this going to be enough if we're a different department in 10 years? As far as whether we would ever have to, and I hope we never have to, go to a non-volunteer or partial non-volunteer force, that's one thing. But how about, if all of a sudden we have more housing that's coming in and it's more different kind of I'm not going to say high rise. It's going to be, I guess, could it be more of a challenge to a fire department? And would we need more room for considering that? Because let's face it, there is a push to push more housing into to Madison.
So no, I mean, the apparatus we currently have is it's sufficient to, serve the town, and you also have both fire departments in the town too. So it's not like just one serves part of the town. We work with each other to take care of incidents in the town. We don't obviously have extra apparatus, so if things got bigger, I don't think we need anything extra. What we have would take care of it. And it's also, just throwing apparatus at a thing isn't going to take care of it. You need the people to do it. The amount of people we have and the apparatus we have works well to handle our incidents, and it's
Handling our incidents now, but what I'm saying is if we have more, I guess, multi-story. Yeah, multi-story, what we have for apparatus is sufficient, and what we're building is sufficient for that,
correct.
obviously.
And looking at our, our truck replacement goes 30 years out, that kind of takes into account for all that too. So there's obviously lots of unknowns looking 30 years out when we plan for apparatus. And we look at that as close as we can and being realistic as we can with what we're purchasing in the future.
I mean, just off the top of my head, I think of like Branford, they must have different apparatus because they have different, or would they not? Bigger trucks.
The taller buildings?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
the apparatus are pretty much the same size. We have the same size ladder trucks as all the surrounding towns.
Okay.
I mean, Branford has the same number. They actually have less engines than they've had in the past. They've reduced some due to, less volunteers. So I think we're good in that regard.
Good, thank you. Appreciate that. So I'm done. Thank you, John.
Katie?
I guess, starting with, Mr. Schmaltz, but also other members of the board, we've heard a lot today about the potential of having a career fire department. Is that like something that's being considered? That's something we should be planning for? This is the first I've heard of it.
No, so that is nowhere talks in any of our 5, 10, or 15-year plan for the fire department.
Okay.
It's not on the horizon.
There's,
Okay.
that hasn't been talked about.
I'm not aware of it.
Okay, so I'm not alone.
We'll be having some
Like-
very hard conversations.
Yeah.
We've actually had in the past, several months, half a year, we've had more people join than we've had in several years. So,
Yeah,
no,
my son,
that's
yeah.
not being talked about at all.
Okay, great.
I think we just end that part of the conversation.
But yeah, I just wanted to be very clear on the record, since it's been a large part of our conversation here, so definitively not on the horizon, thank you. Also, I want to thank you for going over, although I would love for it to be more clear, the process of putting things in CIP and what that looks like. It is a planning document and not an exact science, so when numbers are put in, either for planning dollars or a project itself, we are not spending money to make sure those numbers are 100% correct. And so it is a planning, so lots of times those are placeholder numbers. If people are looking at CIP and expecting that to be Bible, it isn't. It is a planning document that helps us to fund CIP. Once the project kind of gets queued up in year 2, then we start spending money to get real estimates from professionals. So I think there's a lot of misinformation in the public about why these numbers are always so off in CIP. And it's because we are using our professionals that we have doing their, best guess estimates.
Well, that's something I hope to bring to the table with the town is, a lot of times the numbers you pay for aren't the best. And there are other, sometimes well-intentioned motives behind them.
Sure.
And, I've done capital planning for a long time. Peggy's heard my theories on this, so I won't go over. But, year 5 we call them internal estimates, right? So like, that's us sitting down in facilities and putting a number in the plan, strictly placeholder. And as we start to march forward, we look at the number every year. When we get to 2 years out, it's normally not we're paying for it, but we're starting to do a lot more due diligence. And fortunately, we have a pretty good library of projects that we've done, over the past. When you have 20 years of experience in a department, you could pull from, projects you've done 5 years ago. Of course, prices have changed due to market fluctuations, but the work, you have an idea of what it was. I think in Madison, there wasn't enough volume of work. You didn't really have that library to pull from. So it's coming from all sorts of different sources. I normally don't pay for any type of estimating until we've actually gotten the project approved and we're designing. And I can count on one hand how many times that number wasn't enough, because you're making the number big enough and you're building in those contingencies, and the number should be getting smaller and smaller and smaller as you go. Then there has to be a level of trust where if there's money left over at the end of the project, we're gonna give the money back, right? We're not gonna I worked for a municipality where it was like, the money you got is the money you got. And since you couldn't easily get more money, at the end of the project, there's $5 grand left. We were really pushing the envelope of crap to buy just to use the $5,000. And that was like, we're not doing that.
Don't
Like,
want
that's
that
not the
either.
right thing to do. If
Right.
there's $5,000 left in the project, put it back and put it towards the next one. But that being said, if another project needs $5,000, we have to have that flexibility to move them around. As long as our capital plan as a whole is staying intact, money always moves back and forth between projects.
I like to think of it as like a slab of clay, and as it
Sure.
moves up in CIP, it gets chiseled down
Sure.
to the fine point that it ends up becoming. So thank you for that.
First level.
Oh, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I just
Thank
want to
you.
add to that, because we've been talking a lot about how we get better at this. We didn't have a professional staff member that was focused on this before, and that's what a great addition to have somebody who has that depth of experience now to do that for us. I also want to comment, though, that this project dates prior to 2021. I mean, this has been, so we're starting with numbers that are probably, this was 15 years old or something, the original design for the extension. The EOC was added in 2021, and they added some component to the budget. So similar to other projects, a lot of these projects, we're not putting it in year 5 and diligent and then doing the project in 5 years. A lot of these are around for 10 years. So you're starting with like kind of a spitball number 10 years ago that never really got vetted more, and where we then took it and got much more due diligence on it. So it's a learning process now, and I think that Ben will create more discipline about how we come up with our estimates. And CIP having to now bump up that budget a little bit more, 2 or 3 years prior to the plan of construction. So
I think just to add to that is like saying the plants, we've been paying architects like 10 years ago. We're starting to design and paying for ourselves to start that process to really kind of start working through it. And now those are the plans that we actually brought before that budget, before this plan was finalized as well. So we did a lot of due diligence on our own part to get to the potential budget.
Yeah, appreciate all of that.
That's the risk of those paid, I call them paid numbers, because you get a paid number, that number becomes like gospel. And nobody wants to change it because 5 years ago, so-and-so said, here it is. And everybody, starts, like, that's why you don't really want to have a paid number or a really finite number till you're within a year, or you've even approved. What kind of blew me away is like, we haven't even decided on the project like we haven't agreed that the project should move forward. That's usually step one. It's in the CIP, it gets approved in the CIP. We don't discuss whether we need the project or not anymore, right? Now we're just talking money, right? That decision has been made, but here we are talking, do we even need it? Are we gonna be a career fire department? It's like, whoa, that should have happened a long time ago. We're just talking dollars now.
Yes.
The next time the career fire department comes up.
That's it, yeah.
Stop saying that. It's gonna be a
All right, no, you weren't.
It's gonna be headlines at tomorrow's.
I know, that's right here.
Where's my gavel?
So keep saying that over and over and reminding people of the process, because it's not an exact science. It's not meant to be. But finally, I just want to state my support for this project for so many reasons, but mostly having, working at a hospital that often has an incident command system that has to be ready to be up and running very quickly for things that, you could never even imagine or plan for. I was chairing the Board of Ed when we shut down for COVID. And I remember having to set up for months, maybe even a year, a command center, and that it was not the most convenient thing. You guys did a remarkable job as always, but it's one of those things that you are very grateful you have. You hope you never need, but I'm glad that it's not only going to be, I know this project is much more than the EOC. It really is also a big benefit to the heart of our town and will help people. And that's the most important thing. So again, hope we don't need you guys at our house either, but I'm glad that you will be having everything you need to do your job well.
Okay, any other questions for our panel? Matt? Yes.
So a little bit out of scope, but bigger picture. Are we if one of the principles is the apparatus now are bigger, the space that you have is not adequate, you have to have more things. Obviously, you guys are different, being on the south side and the north side, right? Just responding to 95, M&S and all that stuff. Do you anticipate needing to make improvements for North Madison Fire?
That's kind of out of our scope though.
They're gonna cut a career, I heard.
No,
That's it.
no, I mean, but for the reasons that you need the space for your host company, will they need the same thing up north?
Without speaking for them, I mean, they put an addition on their firehouse. Two bays, a little bit smaller square footage than we're looking at now, so it's a.
We really don't want to speak
Yeah,
for them, to be
yeah,
honest
yeah.
with you, it's not our scope to.
It's never been mentioned that they do, right?
If I may, because I was just up at the Nomad ribbon cutting last week, we talked a little bit about this, and just walking in there, it's totally different, it's a much bigger space, it's taller, it's got more space in terms of that, but, I mean, I think what I hear is they're not having a concern about space, but there might be some improvements at one point, and they should be thinking ahead, as you've had to think ahead for a long time, because these things take a long time to improve. Is there something, an improvement, equipment thing that they're gonna need, to address, some of the changes that we just talked about that could be happening in the community. So they're gonna be thinking that way more, but in terms of the space, the feedback I got was, and I think just visually walking around and everything, you can tell it's just they seem to be pretty well set, but I don't wanna speak for them either. But that was kind of the feedback I got.
Will these improvements help you maintain the chili for the Super Bowl?
Yes.
I
Maybe another comment or question.
also think that the answer to that too is there's nothing in CIP right now to have that happen. So if that were to happen, we would know about it well in advance and plan for it.
That was it?
Oh, I can keep going. Give me the podium.
Any other questions or comments? I want to thank you for being here. We do appreciate it. To me, I think I was talking to the chief. No one cares about EOC until they need it, and then all of a sudden, what are we going to do? So I think that's important. The fire department, I don't want to disagree, chief. I think what you said, the EOC could be anywhere. To me, it makes much more sense if it's with the fire department or something like that, as opposed to in Central. So obviously, I think you know where we stand. But I want to thank you for your time, and if there's no other questions, we can go on to the next agenda item. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So I have item number 8, discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the Facilities Department in amount not to exceed $2,602,900 for the Madison Hose Company Firehouse Expansion EOC project that was approved by the Board of Selectmen on June 10, 25. Also pending the town meeting approval. Could I get that in the form of a motion, please? Motion made by Katie, second by Matt. I'm gonna ask, any discussion?
Just a point of clarification. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Lots of ignorance here. I see the appropriations being moved from the unassigned fund balance, and there's a line entry for capital improvement, correct? But we don't have a separate account that has money in it for the capital improvement. It still comes out of the unassigned fund balance. Is that correct?
CIP.
Okay, so CIP is sort of a holding place, but the money's actually coming from our unassigned fund balance. Is that correct?
That's the
Go ahead.
Sir.
That's
The
I keep
recommendation right
thinking-
now, so within the CIP, there's the CNRE fund, and there is a balance in there where many projects are in there. But the balance in there is not only to support year one, it's also to support projects that we're anticipating for years 2 through 5.
Right.
So occasionally, we will ask to reallocate money from the CNRE master towards a project that's in there. But this request is to take from the undesignated fund balance.
And that's because of timing and amount or.
Email.
Yeah.
Email.
Okay.
Let me make sure he's.
Yeah.
Are you done?
I'm good. Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Kind of as a follow-up to this, when we knew that the amount was way off, should we be somehow reserving it in fund balance? We know this project's going, we didn't know it was going to be 5.5 million, but we knew it wasn't going to be 3 million.
I mean,
I think once you allocate it.
We had it on our list all along.
yeah, it was as an appropriation, and we had the original budget amount, because I think they've spent a lot of time trying to get that number down as much as possible. And then finally, there was that final cost analysis, right, that they came in with where this is it, this was the best that they could do. So that's when we decided to move forward with the appropriation.
So I understand what you're saying, John. We could have allocated the money there or separated.
Somehow
Right.
restricted, because my concern is, okay, what other projects are out there similar that we're saying, okay, we thought this was gonna be, and I know it's not an exact science, but when we know that the amount is off, is that time to act and to, because let's face it, we all look at, every month, we look at this fund balance.
And everybody wants to spend it.
Well,
Except us.
Not me.
Except us.
but, yeah, but is it a true accurate position when we have this project over here that we thought was going to be 3 million, it's now 5 million, 5.5 million. And we have another project that we know is undervalued. You know, what point should we be stepping in and saying, okay, we don't really have
12 million, whatever the number.
yeah, we have 8 million left.
So I think what we can, Stacy, I know you have your hand up, so if you want to say something about it. All right, so to me, right, that's one of the things we do. We kind of put down, there's a list of the CIP and we put down what it could be spent for, right?
Right.
But to me, it would be premature. We don't know what the board of selectmen do, with all due respect, we don't know if it's going to improve. We don't know what we're going to do. But yes, you could put a little asterisk highlight and say, wait a second, this 2.6, for lack of better terms, is earmarked for this. And it's kind of there, but you know, it's not, it has, and we don't know if this will get approved by the town. So yeah, I understand what you're saying, so, you know, but that's why we're always talking about being mindful how much money we have in that undesignated fund balance and how we spend it.
So,
Stacy had her hand up first now.
so every month on the bottom of the fund balance, I do list potential special appropriations. If there's a project over an amount in the CIP plan, then it will be listed here until we actually do it. So if you look back for many, many months, this project was listed at 800,000 needed over budget. So it's a 3394 less 2471. We need 800 from fund balance. So we knew this was coming until we had this final number of 5.3 versus 3.3, and now we're ready. So I mean, this doesn't happen often that the number's that far off, but we knew that some funds were going to be needed for this project.
Okay.
I was just gonna comment that, you know, we talked, the board of selectmen probably had 2 meetings last year, right? Where we knew the budget was we would get updates on this. So I'm just thinking going forward, maybe, you know, I can pass on, you know, the board of selectmen. You know, part of that is my job is, I guess, you know, liaison is maybe to kind of give you those heads up a little bit earlier. I know some of you attend the board of selectmen meetings, so regular names on there, we say so, but so it is talked about in public context, but it's not formally reported to you, I guess is the point. So, because we, you know, this was still a surprise to me, it was this high, although it was quoted around the $5 million budget, but, you know, you know, we can do more to kind of make sure it's reported formally to the board.
I think that's, you know, I also, at some point we'll get into it, not the CIP, but some of our estimates that have not been close. We're not talking about the people here, but some of our paid professionals, you know, maybe we're missing something here. Because there's certain things, you know, right? You got a 67-year-old building, you know, there's been problems with the septic, you know, there's going to be asbestos, you can go down the list thing. That's not my field, but I can tell you that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the answer to your statement, having been here, is a whole level of professionalism we haven't seen before. So it might be something, you know, even for the Board of Finance, having a touch base with you, for one of our meetings, just to sniff check.
You can make Ben come to every meeting if you
No,
want.
it's,
You said no.
no, and it's not that there isn't a place for third-party estimates. I just like to use those as the gut check versus them as the Bible and us as the gut check.
Ben, you're missing what I was saying. Sometimes the third-party estimates that we're paying for maybe need more input from us. I'm gonna be really excited.
1,000%.
Right. All right. We have a motion in a second, so we really drifted off. I shouldn't allow that to happen. Any other discussions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention, that motion carries.
Go build it.
One more meeting,
Meeting that, so.
Discuss and take action to accept the donation from neighbor to neighbor in the amount of $27,000 to Madison Family Services discretionary fund for Madison residents and needing financial assistance. Moved by the Board of Selectmen on June 23rd, 25, formal motion. So Matt, second by John. Discussion, anyone else is here if you have any questions, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
Abstention, that motion carries. Item 10, discussing action to accept the donation The ESNS voting tabulators from the Secretary of State, which was approved by the Board of Selectmen, 6/10/25. A motion, please.
So-
Motion made by Katie, can I get a second? Second by Matt and John. Discussion?
Thank you, Secretary of the State. Well, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Item 11, discuss take action, approve a special appropriation request from the Finance Department approved by the Board of Selectmen on May 13, 25 for $12,000 for the annual lease agreement, Westworth land parcel, I think we went through this before, and $11,540 for the Northside Park lease from 10/1/24 through 6/30/25. Can I get those in the form of a motion, please?
So,
Motion made by Katie, can I get a second?
Second,
By Jude, discussion. John?
Yes, thank you. I didn't see the Board of Selectmen meeting. The reason for this is
Which one? A or B?
both.
Okay, A is relating to a strip of Westworth Beach. It's actually not owned by the town. It's owned by the property owner adjacent to it. And a couple of years ago, they came to us and felt that this is their private property, it's being used as a town beach. So we kind of negotiated a temporary lease agreement that has been, we haven't really budgeted for because we're looking at doing some alternative long-term arrangements. So right now, we're kind of just doing this monthly lease payment. So there will be another transaction. I'm hoping to come to you. There's kind of backstory to this that we can talk about offline if you want. But this is right now just to make sure that we have access to that part of the beach. Most residents don't realize that we don't own that strip. So, and, it creates liability issues for the property owner and, and they've been, historically, the town has always used it. So this was trying to create more of a formal agreement. And then the next one is the parking lot. The town actually, that's behind the movie theater, that we actually leased from two property owners that own that parking lot. And we had a 25-year lease that expired last October. Kind of snuck up on us. No one was really following this. And there was a request for a sizable increase in the rent. And we had negotiations back and forth. And rather than doing another 25-year agreement, the board came up with a compromise number just for the next 3 years. We want to actually evaluate whether or not we want to be in the parking business anymore. It was done 25 years ago to help economic development for downtown and help local businesses. The question becomes, why is the town leasing this for public marketing? How else it can be used? So we said we'd agree to a 3-year lease, and then we're going to review options and whether or not we continue funding that. Yes.
has the town considered, because we own the parking lot like behind RJ Julia, that all. I know other municipalities have like paid parking, where you scan something and you pay. Have we ever looked into that so that would pay for the lease of the others?
We haven't. I mean, I think it's typically, if you have high, it obviously it is helpful to have free parking, right? It helps businesses and some. And if you're if you're a Stop and Shop, you got your own parking lot. But if you're a small business on Main Street, you're relying on public parking. So, we haven't explored that. I think, it's a philosophical thing. I think ultimately, if we want to charge for parking and if there's enough demand, I think you tend to see that where you have high demand for parking spots and you can't get one. So it encourages turnover, if you're paying for it. I don't know if we're at that point, but it's certainly something that I think as we entertain probably the next year, to look at the north side parking lot, we should have a broader conversation about it for sure. Because we also have a parking, we pave Amtrak, one of the Amtrak lots too. So that we're responsible for. It doesn't get used as much. And so the thought is, do we try to make that more, attractive and accessible to people as well?
Thank you.
Saying none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Item 12, discuss and take action to request for supplemental funding for the beach and rec department, amount of $15,416 for required structural repairs to town campus. Maintenance garage restoration project approved by the Board of Selectmen, May 27, 25. Form of a motion, please. Motion by Katie, give me a second. Second by Matt.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jude.
I can't hear you. Can I?
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering what the difference between a request for supplemental funding is compared to a request for a special appropriation.
So this is additional funding from the CNR master account. So to John's point earlier, when we said if a project's in CNRE, we can ask to fund any variance from the master account, or we can go to fund balance and take it from an undesignated fund balance. We thought since this amount could be absorbed in the balance in CNRE, we're going to do that, reallocate within CNRE rather than tapping into the fund balance.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Item 13, discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request for public works from $79,140 for snow removal. Approved by the Board of Selectmen, May 27, 25. Motion by Katie, a second. Second by Matt. Discussion, we want to hear about snow removal.
Did it snow?
The selectmen's meeting mentioned that it is not just snow removal, it includes town response to weather events.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, it's not just snow.
So,
I-
emergency response.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. No, we really need to rename this account. But we did have some snow events, but they were all on the weekend. And that was the other problem, is so now you're dealing with, significant overtime, and things like that. So, but it is also like, just heavy rain that washed out things or flooding or anything like that. But I think we're talking about being kind of renaming that too.
Does it include things like tree removal on streets, or is that responsibility of the people?
So some of it is emergency response, tree removal, yeah.
Thank you. First Selectman, any other comments?
I was just gonna ask why we're getting this
Yeah.
year.
Usually the end of the budget, usually the last quarter where you go through. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yep. It's pretty typical at the end of the year reconciliation. We go through all of our accounts, try to move things around, try to find funds within the department. So Public Works will look and see if they have any funds to transfer before asking for a special appropriation. So this is pretty much the annual reconciliation.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Item 14, discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the North Madison Volunteer Fire Department for $200,000 fire protection water tanks approved by the Board of Selectmen on May 27, 25. Motion, please.
So moved.
80, second. Second. Discussion, comments?
I have a chair question.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, I mean, in the past, we've had these water tanks built and 150 covered it. I'm just wondering why the price has gone up to more than double that. Was there some explanation given about that when this request was made?
Great question. I don't have it. That's it.
So the tank prices have doubled.
You hear that, Jude?
We just recently put in a tank at Bartlett Drive.
Yeah,
So they're saying prices have doubled. Can you hear me?
The tank prices have doubled.
tank prices have doubled. Okay.
And, obviously, the wages are going up. But it was 348,000 for the tank on Bartlett Drive we just put in.
It's beautiful.
So unfortunately, that's the cost of it.
And just to comment, this is another one, there's been a placeholder number on this. It took us years to get this one done, right?
Yeah.
So it's slow process, and this has been a placeholder number for like 15 years, I think, when I was on the board. So, this is a more accurate reflection of what it would cost now.
Fair enough. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstention, that motion carries. Item 15, discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the Madison police services for 96,228 to the overtime special to the account for the end of year reconciliation, which was approved by the Board of Selectmen on May 27, 25. We have that form of a motion. Motion by Katie, second. Matt. This is the end of the year, but discussion or comments?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
just one request for the finance department. Can we look at like 4 or 5 year trend of the overtime? Because I think this number was similar to last year.
It's every year.
Yeah, and just to see, should we budget for it?
So we budget for it in the expenditure side, we also budget for it in the revenue side. So sure, it'll increase our expenditure budget when we're going through the budget process. But the net impact will be 0 because we'll just have the revenue too. So we just never went through the step to increase that expenditure budget because it would just. Yeah, but it is a wash. And our revenue right now is 125,000 over what we budgeted. So the expense is 96, but our revenue is 125 over. Yeah, it's kind of weird the way we do it.
At least you get the money, and some places don't.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other
The
comments?
special duty is for like the road
Road
construction,
structure,
and
UI.
we bill it out,
Yeah.
and that's the wash.
That's why I said it's, at least we're collecting.
Yeah,
I know some
yeah.
places that don't collect dollar for.
Yeah. No, I agree.
We'll leave it at that.
Yep.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, item 16, discuss the act and approve a special appropriation request from Facilities Department of up to $228,200 for Green Hill softball turf replacement project approved by the Board of Selectmen on June 10, 25, which was budgeted in the CIP in fiscal 26. Can I get that in form of a motion, please?
So
Katie, can I get a second? Thank Matt. Discussion.
I guess I just want to call out, we did get a letter about this. A similar discussion about it at the Board of Selectmen meeting, about the potential health complications from artificial turf. So I just wanted to make sure that that was acknowledged.
So, any other comments?
Yeah, I would follow up on that by saying that, I have no problem with replacing the current synthetic field, but it's not a place tonight to talk about, but we probably should talk a little bit about perhaps some kind of planning in the future for if we're to replace any other fields. Perhaps Mr. Joseph would weigh in on that as the Director of Health. I bought a study that I found on health impacts of artificial turf. So it seems like it's not completely clear as to whether it's all good or all bad, but I think it probably deserves further investigation by us before we move forward with future fields. But again, I have no problem replacing the current synthetic turf with a new synthetic.
I got a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one comment, because I did speak to the superintendent about this, and I know that the athletic director has been monitors all this stuff, and they feel very, I think it was been a Board of Education discussion for on and off again for years. So it is something the town does monitor. I think one point that Austin has made is our field use is so heavy now, and it's usually 3 seasons. I don't know if we could offer the same level of playing activity if we didn't have artificial turf. So that was some of the comments too. But you know, science is changing too, and options are changing, so we should always be on top of
It's absolutely warranted discussion, but there's so many places that use artificial turf for a lot. Doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's inherently good or inherently bad, but I know this turf needs to be replaced. That I think absolutely know. Go ahead, Kate.
Is there a fields account? Like
The
it's
summer
CIP?
fund?
Yeah.
Not currently, it's in the CNRE fund. I bet her tonight. I said, how much you
Been
want to
talking
bet?
about
Someone's
it.
gonna bring that up today.
That's me, sorry. But, I mean, we do have a lot of fields in town that might simplify life and help.
If we have a separate way of tracking all the fields, it's not in one versus project by project. Because right now it's like a one-off project, and we should have the whole boom, boom, life cycle, all that. So we're gonna work on it.
Go ahead, Judah. You wanted to say something?
I was agreeing, sorry, out loud. that we need to consider all of the fields. Yeah.
So just to touch on that, with fields, it's like any other asset. Like if you take a school, for example, that's like saying we're gonna have a separate account just to replace mechanical equipment. You don't really need to do that because those are all individual projects within your SIP anyway. So sometimes it makes sense to have like an operating account that's specifically for fields to do those things that are bridge the gap between like operating and capital, some high dollar, like if you have to do I don't remember the terms, but like a massive re-grooming or something like that, a $5,000-$10,000 thing that has to happen every 3 years, that might be good to set up a fund for. But in terms of like a field replacement, the way to do it is through your SIP, right? If you have 5 fields, you're not replacing them all at the same time. They're all going to come up and they just live in there as their own projects.
But I don't think we track, and maybe this isn't an account, but I'm just talking about monitoring the life cycle of them.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it wouldn't necessarily be an account dedicated to that, it would still be project
Right.
based, but just so we've got all mapped out and understand.
Right, so what I was doing with
Yeah.
fields is anytime I built a new field, a synthetic field, I'd immediately put in a SIP project.
Yes.
I'd develop the SIP project right then and put it in my file for 15 years where I'm not gonna be there anyway, but I'll tell the next guy where.
That's what I'm looking for, because right now it sits in CNRE, which is
Correct.
capital non-recurring.
Yep.
It does recur.
Yeah.
And so having
Well,
it,
all capital recurs at
Yes,
some point.
exactly.
well, but.
Nothing lasts forever.
But that's where it lies now in
Right.
an account, and it
Anything
feels
that's
like we
like-
know it's coming if we could better plan for that cycle.
If you buy an asset that's under like a 15-year lifespan, usually it's good to just put in kind of like whatever you use as a tickler file at that point. If you're buying a 30-year asset, that's usually not something you want to put in the books immediately, but field certainly is one you could do.
John, you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I think this kind of feeds into what we said earlier, another asterisk on fund balance. We have these things that we know are going to be recurring and we should have a grasp on it.
Just a quick question, I had a quick question, how old's that field? How long is that turf now?
Too old.
I know, listen, I know, my kids don't play there anymore, so it's not, but I know it needs to be done, but that turf.
I think it's 20 years, and that was actually a steep grant that,
I was gonna say
the town
20 years.
received.
I mean, most of the last 10, so.
Yeah.
This is well beyond its.
Oh, yeah, it shows.
Not really.
So it entered the SIP in fiscal year 18, slated for construction in 20. So it actually was right at that 15-year mark, and then it got.
Yeah, so I'm in support of replacing what we have, and I do agree with John's concern about the health risks, of the turf field. Not only from the chemicals, as Mr. Brady had sent us really good information on that, but also physical injuries. The kids are planting, the cleats and everything else. There is good data out there now, so it's something we're going to have to balance versus do we build more fields of salt metal or something like that. But we'll have to have that conversation.
Well, any other comments? We have a motion to approve up to 220,200 for renal softball turf replacement. Motion made in second. No other discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstention, the motion carries. Item 17, discussing action to approve release of funds from the plan of reserve in amount not to exceed 75,000 to fund the Surf Club Master Plan project approved by the Board of Selectmen June 23rd, 25. And with that, form of motion, please.
So,
Motion made by Katie, second by Matt. Discussion.
Yes, is it getting moved up based on the CIP schedule? I thought this was out.
Casey, that was a question for you. Thanks, bud.
Thanks, but I'm sorry.
It's
It's
get
just
moved up in the CIP schedule.
the Surf Club master planning. I thought it was like in year 5.
We already have 75,000 in there, but we're asking for additional funds for the entire site. So this is over and above
I got it.
75,000 that was in CIP.
Thank you.
Who's in charge of that project and when will we get a report from that? So I can get a report.
So we're meeting on Monday to choose a vendor. And then we'll go to the Board of Selectmen for their approval of the vendor. This is just the consultant to develop a plan. We're not building anything right now. It's just the plan to figure out what we're gonna
So
do.
your vendor will be the person who will actually make some drawings and proposals, and then will that person or persons also have cost estimates?
Correct. And multiple public meetings for public information sessions.
Any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention, that motion carries. Item 18, discussion take action to approve the recent funds and reserving amount not to exceed 24,000 to fund additional designs for the Boston Post Road crosswalk sidewalk project approved by the Board of Selectmen June 23rd, 25.
So moved.
Katie, can I get a second?
Second.
Second by John. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
And I'm sorry, this is, I hope it's related, but this reminds me of the Green Hill Safety Study we had talked about in the past. Have we ever had any results from that? And does that tie into this?
Does this tie into the greenhouse safety?
No, this is separate. This is actually, we submitted a lots of application to do a crosswalk at West Wharf, Boston Post Road, and a sidewalk on West Wharf. And then also two crosswalks on the other end of town. And we kind of bundled the projects because lots of it was just state funding. And they paid for all the construction, requires a $300,000 threshold. When we submitted everything, they came back and said, we love the project and we want you to expand your sidewalks. They will pay for it all, so we have to pay for the design. So now they came back with a design plan, which is really our phase 2. We were hoping to do this. Sidewalk going from West Wharf to downtown. That would go partly around Boston Post Road and then partly down, forget the name of that little street there. No, yeah, right there, Britton Lane, and then connect to the green. And then sidewalks on both sides of Route 1 over by Hammonasset and Cohen's Bagel, that whole strip there, all the way down to Cottage Road. So that's going to be a huge improvement. So we just have to pay for, this is to help us update the design. There'll still be a lot of public input for all that, and then we have to go through lots of again, and then there'll be public hearings and stuff like that. But they were just, saying, hey, we got more money and lots of, let's use it to expand the sidewalk, so.
And it's unrelated, but the Green Hill study, what's the highway safety and potential sidewalk, is that completed yet?
No, that has not been completed, we just, it'll take a while, there'll be public hearings on all that. And then the design will come back, and then the board will have to vote on whether or not we're gonna submit the application to LASA based on the design plans.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. We have item 19, discussing action to approve the routine line item transfers for fiscal 25, totaling amount of $594,415, approved by the Board of Selectmen on May 27th and June 23rd. Motion by Katie, a second. Second by Matt, and this is what we discussed. It's just, these are within most of the departments and just
Trying to find funds within before we
on a
would
special.
approach a special.
Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Item 20, discuss the action to appoint Mahoney Sable, the auditors for the town for fiscal 25. That form of motion. Katie, second. How many years have you been?
This is the second year since we went out to RFP.
Okay. That's fine. Go ahead, Matt.
Has our price changed?
Goes up a little bit, yeah, it's about 70,000.
Does the increase or decrease?
Goes up a little bit every year.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. We have a review of the financials. Any comments?
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Chief. Any members of the public would like to speak? Steve? Let's see, second time? Third time? Okay, seeing none, public information session is closed. So I need a motion to go into executive session to to update on current and upcoming labor contract negotiations. Boston, motion made, can I get a second? I'm gonna invite Stacy, I know, Peggy can stay, Stacy can stay, stay too. if she wants.
What's that?
Deb's on.
Yeah, and then Deborah Forsythe, HR director.
Fortunately, Jay can't stay.
How do we,
And Jean, no, Jean can be elected into.
No, Jude.
Oh, Jude, no,
Jude's
Jude,
gotta
yeah,
stay.
no, Jude will stay, so Jean will just close out the,
The line.
What's that, Matt? We need to vote on it first.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. Bob made the motion. Katie second. All in favor, say aye.
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 We're in executive session.
Sign something, so don't forget. Everyone forget.
Good evening.
I don't trust her.
Session at 8:50. Are we gonna wait for, you to come in or no? Just back in?
you guys do it.
We need to sign something. Yeah.
And now you're recording,
Yes.
so.
We got, we're back in executive session at 8:50, out of executive session at 8:50. Is, I'd like for a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned at 8:51.